Yeah. I'm starting to get better at it. All right. Genesis chapter 21. Let's start with the Olens today.
And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. How many verses do we want to read?
Let's go with 5. I think we can do 5 today.
Okay. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, and as God had commanded. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him.
And Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. And she also said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have bore him a son in his old age. So the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had bore to Abraham, scoffing. Therefore she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Isaac.
Okay. Sherry, welcome. We are in Genesis 21. And Sherry just finished verse 10. So if you could, why don't you read verse 11?
This upset Abraham very much because Ishmael was his son. But God told Abraham, do not be upset over the boy and your servant. Do whatever Sarah tells you, for Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted.
We are going 5 verses. So did you go up to 15?
No.
Okay.
But I will also make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, because he is your son too. So Abraham got up early the next morning, preparing food and a container of water, and strapped them on Hagar's shoulders. Then he sent her away with their son, and she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone, she put the boy in the shade of a bush.
All right. Fred and Julia.
Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away. I don't want to watch the boy die, she said as she burst into tears. But God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants. Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well full of water. She quickly filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness. He became a skillful archer.
And he settled in the wilderness of Paran. His mother arranged for him to marry a woman from the land of Egypt. About this time, Abimelech came with Phicol, his army commander, to visit Abraham. God is obviously with you, helping you in everything you do. Abimelech said, swear to me in God's name that you will never deceive me, my children, or any of my descendants. I have been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country where you are living as a foreigner. Abraham replied, yes, I swear to it. Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had taken by force from Abraham's servants.
All right. Don and Elaine, if you can finish it off, please. Oh, you're muted. Don, you're muted. There you go.
This is the first I've heard of it, Abimelech answered. I have no idea who is responsible. You have never complained about this before. Abraham then gave some of his sheep, goats, and cattle to Abimelech, and they made a treaty. But Abraham also took 7 additional female lambs and sent them off by themselves. Abimelech. Abimelech answered, "Why have you set these 7 apart from the others?" Abraham replied, "Please accept these 7 lambs to show your agreement that I dug this well." 10:31.
Then he named the place Beersheba, which means well of the oath, because that was where they had sworn the oath. After making their covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech left with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned home to the land of the Philistines. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and there he worshiped the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham lived as a foreigner in Philistine country for a long time.
All right. Well, welcome, Pam. We're
Yeah.
glad to have you with us. Hey, how are you doing?
I just got her on here, but she's making her way up the stairs. So
Okay.
I
okay.
wasn't sure this was the same link. So I was like, oh, I'm on. So I was waiting for her.
No problem. No
Hi.
problem. So
Hi,
glad to
Janae.
see you.
Yeah.
Janae.
I'm really looking forward
Hi.
to. Mhm.
Look at. Yeah.
There
Look
she is.
Hey, Pam.
Hey. How you doing, Pam?
Welcome,
there.
welcome, welcome.
So good to see you.
It's good to see you, Pam.
Well, it's I look a lot different than I did before. But
You look-
it's
you
a
look a
new
lot better
style.
than you did.
Yeah.
Aw.
Anyway, the therapist today told me that I need to be in touch with you guys.
Oh,
You
okay,
betcha.
good.
I'm slow to speak, and it's been a witch. Say the word.
Wow.
You sound good, Pam. It's good to hear
Yeah,
your
it's
voice.
good. It's very good to
Been
hear you.
good to
Pam.
us.
You betcha.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Glad to
I
have
can't
you.
do anything about it.
You're fine.
I'm,
We love you.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm working hard to form sentences and all the things that come with speech. But
Mhm.
Well, we'll put you in 2nd grade this year.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, I'm sure all of us are just so glad to see you.
You
Yeah.
betcha.
And I think your sentences are fine. I don't
Good.
know.
sounding
I
good.
wouldn't be too self-conscious about it. I think
No,
with everything you've gone through, I think you're doing very, very well.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes.
Yes.
Amen.
yes.
you never know what's gonna happen to you.
No.
Right,
No,
right.
but you came through with flying colors. That's important.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yes, yes. So,
All right. You got your Bible. You're ready to read.
one, I know, I don't know if I can read tonight, but
You could try.
Yeah, it's all
I
right.
can,
It's okay. I think we're all done reading, Pam.
Yeah,
Oh,
we just got done.
just got done.
Right, we are in Genesis 21.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You skipped some, Pam. I don't know where you've been.
Yeah, so we're in the midst of our discussion now. Let me just paraphrase what we've read. This is the story of Abraham and Hagar and Ishmael. And this is the chapter where Isaac was born. And after Isaac was born, we read about how both Hagar and Sarah got into a fight again, because Hagar, for whatever reason, whether it be insecurity or jealousy or whatever it is, started making fun of Isaac. And because of that, Sarah just, if I can even put this, just totally lost it. He basically said, forget this, under no circumstances will I have Hagar or Ishmael under my house. And for Abraham, he was caught between a rock and a hard place. He loved those two people, but at the same time, he knew that happy wife, happy life. And he basically had to send them away. And Hagar got lost in the wilderness, and God came and saved her and promised her that her son was going to be a great nation. And this guy named Abimelech, which we read in the last chapter, also came around, understanding. He understood how it seems to him that no matter what Abraham did, everything prospered. And so he wanted to make a treaty with Abraham. And that treaty is basically that they would be friends for life, that they would not harm each other. And Abraham said, well, you got to talk to your own servants, because they drove away my servants. And Abimelech said, all right, never heard about it. But somehow he made that treaty. And what's interesting is Abraham wanted Abimelech to know that he was the one who dug the well. This wasn't Abimelech's well. His servants didn't dig it. It was all Abraham. And somehow Abimelech's servants drove him away. Now, we know that Abraham has an army, defeated 5 kings before. And so you begin to see how Abraham was really working to set peace with even Abimelech. He basically said, all right, I guess we need to, dig another well up or something, or God will provide water somewhere, because he could have done some serious damage to Abimelech's servants. He could have done some serious damage to Abimelech. And somehow, because of his relationship with God, because he knew that he was called to be a blessing, he did what I'm not even sure I could do. You know what I mean? I think some of the hardest things to do is to be kind to people who aren't kind to you. People who treat you unjustly, to somehow just back away and let God fix things. I'm not even sure, just because of my mindset, whether that's the way people should do it or not. And that's why when people like Abraham do something like that, I'm just like, that's some good stuff. That is godly stuff. So that's kind of the chapter in a nutshell, Pam. And again, we're just really glad you're here.
Wealthy.
Amen. Yes.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. All right. Anything stand out in our chapter today?
In chapter verse 9, when let's see, it was that, was it the Ishmael making fun of Isaac, or Hagar making fun of Isaac, that made Sarah mad and to send her away?
You're right. It was Ishmael. I'm sorry, I misspoke on that one.
So it was Ishmael making fun of Isaac.
Yeah. Right. And at this point, I think Ishmael is what, 12, 13?
He has to be at least 13, so if not
right?
15.
How old is Isaac?
Just born.
Oh,
And I don't know. I know for me, I did things to my brother when I was 13 that would probably be, barbaric compared to whatever Ishmael was doing. But again, it's just, there was so much tension already at that time.
Isaac would have been just a little older. I don't know when they weaned children back then. I don't know if it would have been 4 or 5 years old. I don't know, but so that would have meant Isaac would have been close to 18 or 19 by then.
Hmm. Yeah. It could be, was about to be weaned. So I don't know what before weaning is. For some reason, I have it in my mind that they're about 10 years apart. I don't know where I'm getting that. No? Okay.
Because Ishmael was 13 when he was circumcised with Abraham.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Abraham was
That was
So
a
at least
year ago.
13?
199.
So at least 13, you're saying?
I think 13 or 14
Okay.
because Abraham was 99, he was 13 when they were circumcised, and then Sarah had the baby a year later when he was 100.
Right.
And so weaning here is between ages 3 to 9. So
Okay.
Todd is probably correct, around 4.
All right. I don't know if you guys all heard that.
yes.
Okay.
Nice to hear her voice too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now down verse 15, it said when the water was gone and she put the boy in the shade, if the boy was 18, it sounded like he was a lot younger than that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she
he would
sat
only
down
been
by
really
herself 100 yards away, and I don't want to watch the boy die. It's like he's quite a bit younger.
Mm.
Or was he older and just already so in need of water that he was
Right.
pretty ill and weak?
Yeah.
Dehydrated.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what your question was, Don. Are you saying that the
It
text
seem-
is saying that it seemed like he was younger than 18? Is that what you were
Well,
trying to tell me?
The verse says that she put the boy in the shade of the bush,
Mhm.
and then she went down by herself and didn't want the verse, well, it'd be 16, and didn't want to watch the boy die. And she burst into tears. It sounded like the boy was quite young. If he was 18 or so,
Hmm.
he would have been more able to,
She wouldn't have set him in the bush.
yeah,
You don't set an
And-
18-year-old.
and watch the boy die. I don't want to watch the boy die. She burst into tears.
Right. So again,
God said he
I
heard the
think
boy
here,
crying.
I'm guessing what you're saying is maybe it seems like Hagar carried him there. Is that what you're saying? If he was somewhat like a teenager, let's just say 15 to 18, he would have brought himself, or he would have. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think so. And then she
Okay.
wouldn't have to carry the load on her shoulders when Abraham strapped the stuff on her shoulders
Mhm.
and sent her away
Right.
and wandered aimlessly in the wilderness.
Right.
Cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think we can assume that he was 15 to 18. What exactly happened, whether Hagar, just kind of put him in her arm, just had whether it was it was Ishmael who had some issues with water, and because of that was starting to faint, and how Hagar actually got him to the bush. Obviously, we don't know that from the text, but I do think that it seems to me that on verse 17, that it says here, God heard the boy crying.
Yeah,
And so I do think that for the most part, it was a tough ordeal for both mother and child. And I do think that that Ishmael probably was he probably was also carrying a whole lot more than physical pain at this point. Maybe he felt like it was his fault that all of this was happening. The fact that, maybe he had really a lot of anger towards Isaac, or just the whole situation. That usually takes out a lot of energy. And so there's so many things, I think, that ties into this whole part of this story. But I do think that Hagar had to help him somehow, and I don't know why. Because I get your point that at 18 years old, maybe he would have had to, he would be a little bit stronger than his mom, and that could be true, but he also could have been carrying a lot of load as far as just emotionally, mentally, and maybe he was carrying most of this stuff as they were going, because again, there's just two of them.
On this one little commentary that I'm reading, it says they were reduced to great distress there. Their provisions were spent and Ishmael was sick. He was used to being full fed in Abraham's house, and he now fainted and sunk when he was brought to short allowance. So I think he was just sick from not getting enough food. They wandered so long, had no provisions.
thank you.
Yeah, it's a good one. Which commentary did you get that from, Julia?
I went into Bible Gateway and it has Matthew Henry's commentary.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Yeah, it's one of my favorites too. I'm sorry, Todd, were you want to say something?
No.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Fred.
That's all right.
You sound so much like Todd.
We really don't know how long they were out in the bush.
That's
How
true.
long they traveled. It could have been quite a while.
Right.
Just run out of gas, so to speak.
I'm sure. No, I've been to Beersheba, and there's really not much stuff there. Obviously, I'm thinking they were going south towards Egypt, because that's where Ishmael, towards the Jordan side, that's where Ishmael grew his kingdom, so to speak. And so it's tough stuff. It's almost like Nevada, New Mexico. Very little vegetation at all, or very little bodies of water.
Well, that had to be tough on him too, because he was forced out of his house and away from his dad. And of course, he brought it on himself. Like we usually do to ourselves. We say the wrong thing at the right time and get ourselves in a heap of trouble. So they did it to themselves back then, just like we do it to ourselves today. So nothing's changed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Before Ishmael was born, was he destined to live in the desert? Was there something about when Abraham had Ishmael by Hagar, was he destined for this kind of life?
Are you asking if there was a prophecy?
Yes.
I don't know of one. I do think though that that whether he was going to go towards the desert or go where Lot went, because Lot, obviously where Lot went was a lot more fertile. For whatever reason, Ishmael went the other way. And I think he went the other way because of his mom. I think his mom is an Egyptian, and so she would tend to move towards Egypt, just because that's what she's familiar with. But again, a woman by herself traveling, I mean, it's tough now. Back then, it's nearly impossible.
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Right.
It's good that God intervened there and comfort both of them.
Right. And I know in verse 17, again, this whole phrase of the angel of God, there is a study on this, and that this actually is Jesus, just like Jesus is also Michael, that somewhere in Revelation, he's also he leads the angelic army. And usually when there's an article, not an angel of God versus the angel of God, it's very possible that this was Jesus, because he's also the Lord of armies or angel armies. Anyway, it seems to me that if that is the case, and for me, in reading up on that study, it looks like it looks like there's a very good possibility that Jesus actually introduces himself in many ways, whether it be Son of God, Son of Man, and sometimes he calls himself Michael. And at this point, he also, I believe, sometimes introduces himself as the angel of God. And if that's the case, then again, God comes down to human beings in spite of our brokenness, and in spite of the fact that this was Abraham's fault, and God comes down to save them anyway, and then promises them that he's going to be a great nation, that they're never he basically promised Hagar that she's never going to be a slave again, and that the legacy of his kid will not be as a slave either. And for me, I don't know why God does that, but it seems to me such an incredible, gracious act for God to say, I don't make junk. Even when my children make mistakes, I save them from, not only do I save them from the mistake, I control the future of their mistakes. That gives me a lot of hope, because I made a lot of mistakes.
I think it's interesting that the Bible records that Abraham was a foreigner in the land of the Philistines. I mean, this was supposed to be his land. God had given it to him. So I wonder why it refers to him as a foreigner.
Because he didn't own any of the land.
But yet God said it was his.
Right. And this is where we also can see that a lot of times people of faith never see God's promise come to pass, but they have faith anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And for Abraham, he never saw his kid being a great nation. He saw a lot of kids, because, as we will find out, I think it's next chapter, he remarries again. And we think that Keturah, and we being, there's some rabbinic traditions that says Keturah is actually Hagar. And so it seems to me that, you know, after Sarah dies, Abraham actually reconnects with Keturah and have other kid, or Hagar, and have other kids with her. And that's why when Abraham died, both Ishmael and Isaac were there, because it seems to me that even Abraham, if that is the case, if the rabbinic traditions are correct, then there is this other story of reconciliation that happens that the New Testament doesn't say. But it seems to me, you know, to your point, that Abraham never saw anything that would even give an inkling that he will be a great nation, that he will own any kind of land. But he stayed in Canaan, as we've read before, that because he's like, no, this is my land. I don't own, you know, I don't have the deed yet, but God promised me, so I'm staying here.
Amen.
I'd like to just spend a few more minutes on this whole covenant with Abimelech. Because if we again look at that place, that Beersheba where Abraham was, there's only so much water there. And it seems to me that Abraham struck it. He was the one who built that well. And I do believe that God had a whole lot of things to do with that. And obviously that well kept giving water, which tells me that there's no one around there that actually was able to even dig a well the way Abraham has been able to. And Abimelech recognizes this. And because he recognizes it, he was attracted to Abraham, not because he was attracted to Abraham's God. He was attracted to Abraham because of the blessings Abraham was getting because of God. And I do think that many people will be attracted to the lives of people who love God. Not because they love God, but because they see God's blessings in their life. And I just wanted to bring that out with this. And for Abraham, he I think started learning his lesson now. Because as you read with this, that he actually planted a tree at Beersheba, and there he probably, it doesn't say here, but we can assume that he built an altar there. And for me, that is another public display for him that God is the one that he served, that he wasn't going to cater to any of the gods that everyone else around him was worshiping. He was going to worship it says here, Yahweh, the eternal God. And so I do think that we can learn something from that as well. Because I do think that many times when people start getting blessed by God, they start forgetting God. That somehow the attraction that they get for being blessed by God gets into their head, and all of a sudden they want more of the attraction than for them to, you know, focus their worship in God. And at this stage of Abraham's life, he was going to get it right. Just like in the next chapter, we also read that he was going to get it right. So it seems to me that Abraham, through the process that he went through, started learning his lessons really well. And I think we can learn from that, because all of us are in a process. And I do believe that we are getting better every day, every month, and every year. And somehow our faith is growing because the author of our faith is continuing to put us in situations where we have to either, not we have to, but we're given the opportunity to either show our faith or show something else. So I pray that all of us will continue that growth process in our faith.
Amen.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I'm going to stop. Thank you for joining us at our prayer and Bible study session as we journey through the Bible one chapter at a time. We realize that you might have some questions or comments on the things that we discussed today. And if you do, please feel free to fill out the form below. Also, if you would like to have your own Bible, please fill out the form below and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next time at our prayer and Bible study session.